Welcome, curious explorers, to the deep dive. Today we're kind of setting aside the usual rules.
Definitely.
We're diving headfirst into some pretty metaphysical stuff, material that really challenges the basic definition of you.
Yeah, forget what you think your limits are. We're going beyond standard biology, standard physics even. We're asking, like, if your identity is built on molecules that are always changing, what's actually constant? What's the real you?
And what happens when the very tools we trust, our senses, might actually be holding us back?
Inhibitors, that's the word Seth uses. Yeah, it gets interesting.
This is where it gets really fun, I think.
Yeah.
So our mission today is an intense exploration, a deep dive into session 55 of the Early Sessions Book 2. This is from the Seth material.
Right, channeled by Jane Roberts. This specific session was recorded back on Wednesday, May 20, 1964.
And just a reminder for everyone listening, this material comes from the Seth material, which is, well, incredibly profound stuff.
Absolutely. We really encourage you to study these works yourself. You can check out the New Awareness Network website and their bookstore at sethcenter.com/, The Early Sessions.
Definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
So today, we're navigating Seth's ideas about, well, consciousness in cells, identity being maybe arbitrary, and even a pretty wild take on future space travel.
And we'll try to do it with, a bit of insightful fun, keeping that critical curiosity sharp.
Okay, section 1, setting the stage. Before we get to the really mind-bending concepts, I just love the notes around this session.
Oh, the context is great, isn't it?
It really grounds it. Jane, or Rupert as Seth calls her, was apparently nervous. She had a kink in her neck, and the traffic noise outside was loud.
It's kind of perfect, right? Here's this channel bringing through these huge cosmological ideas, and she's got a stiff neck and cars honking. It really shows that this kind of psychic work, it doesn't need some, perfectly silent sacred space. Sometimes it just punches right through everyday life.
Totally. The mind can focus even with distractions. It makes it feel more real somehow.
Humanizes it, definitely. And we also hear about who wasn't there. Jim Tennant was supposed to witness, but couldn't make it. His wife was in the hospital.
Right, so that led to what they called a quiet session. Just Seth, Jane channeling, and Joseph, her husband, taking the notes.
And those circumstances, they kind of create this intimate atmosphere. We also get this little update on Miss Callahan. Remember her from previous sessions?
Yes, Seth had warned about a potential crisis date for her around May 23rd, just a few days after the session.
But the notes mentioned Jane had visited her recently and found her doing remarkably well, actually, despite some memory trouble.
Which is a nice bit of relief, isn't it, after the earlier tension?
Exactly. These little human details, they're like the psychic barometer for the session. They show how these teachings connect directly to people's lives.
So Seth starts the session, acknowledges the quiet room, and then boom, right into concepts that need new words.
Immediately. The transcriber, Joseph, notes Seth using psychophysical. He actually had to check the dictionary later. It wasn't even listed back then.
Wow. And that follows using extral value before.
Yeah, when a source like Seth starts inventing terms, you're heading into territory that our usual language just can't quite capture.
So psychophysical, what's the idea there? Not just mind and body.
More like mind is body and body is mind. Inseparable. The psychological, the energetic, the conscious aspect is the physical structure, just viewed differently. It's about how energy actually becomes matter.
Okay. And extral value.
That one's fascinating, too. It seems to point towards something beyond material worth, like a quality of experience or existence itself that fuels the expansion of reality. Value fulfillment, maybe, not something you can measure with tools.
So these new words are basically mapping out a reality that's fundamentally conscious and energetic.
That's the framework, and it leads straight into rethinking the body itself.
Right, section 2, the cohesion of identity. This is where the idea of self starts getting wonderfully shaky.
Seth says the human body is a psychic gestalt.
A gestalt, meaning the whole is more than the sum of its parts, right?
Exactly, but crucially, a psychic gestalt. The organization isn't just mechanical wires and pipes. It's conscious. It's energetic.
So our bodies aren't just machines. They're more like, a bustling city. And every single cell is a conscious resident.
That's a great analogy. A collective, a federation of trillions of conscious entities all working together in this incredibly complex harmony.
Wow. So if it's a collective, what holds it all together? Why don't we just dissolve into like cellular dust.
That's the key question. And Seth says the cohesion, the thing holding the U structure together, isn't inherent in the physical stuff itself.
It's not? Then what is it?
It's projected upon the structure, projected from the inner ego and the inner vitality.
The inner ego, like the CEO of the cellular city.
Kind of, yeah. It provides the blueprint, the pattern, and maybe more importantly, the constant determination needed to maintain that specific structure, to maintain the sense of separation that makes you distinct.
So determination holds the physical form together.
Seth really emphasizes that. Without that focused determination from the inner ego, the structure would lose its coherence pretty quickly.
Okay, but wait. If the inner ego is projecting this structure, why do we rely so much on our outer senses? The very things you said Seth calls inhibitors later on.
That's the paradox, isn't it? Creating a physical self, a localized body in this reality, seems to require a localized focus. The inner ego uses that determination to enforce a temporary boundary, which is necessary for having experiences within three-dimensional reality.
So the boundary is functional for being here, but maybe not ultimately real.
Exactly. It's functional, but fundamentally illusory when you look at the bigger picture.
And that bigger picture involves the opposite idea, right? That despite this apparent separation, there's a deep connection.
Yes. Seth confirms there's a basic, enduring connection and kinship between every atom and molecule in the entire universe, regardless of what structure they're currently part of.
So, the atoms in my hand are related to atoms in you, like Jupiter.
Fundamentally, yes. There's an underlying kinship. The separation we perceive is just a temporary focus, maintained by that inner ego's determination. The universe is like one vast, interconnected, cooperative organism. Our bodies are just one very specific, very determined, temporary focal point within it.
That totally reframes things like illness, doesn't it?
Certainly.
If the body is this cooperative collective, illness isn't just a mechanical breakdown. It's maybe a breakdown in cooperation, a problem with the inner ego's blueprint or determination.
Precisely. If the inner ego, the CEO, is projecting a pattern of conflict or fear or disharmony, that pattern impacts the whole cellular collective. It affects their cooperation, their cohesion, and that can manifest physically. Consciousness patterns first, physical results second.
Wow. Okay, so if the inner ego projects reality and our bodies are these psychic gestalts, what about our senses? This brings us to section 3.
Right, and this is where Seth makes that really provocative claim. The outer senses, sight, hearing, touch, all of them can be seen as inhibitors.
Wait, inhibitors?
Yeah.
The tools I use to, see reality are actually holding me back. That sounds crazy.
It's a direct challenge to how we normally think, isn't it? We trust our senses completely. They feel objective. Seth says, "My dear friends, I have been waiting to tell you for some time that in a very true sense, the outer senses can be regarded as inhibitors."
But evolution. Aren't sight and hearing these amazing adaptations that helped us survive?
Oh, absolutely. They are triumphs for survival within a limited physical environment. Seth's argument is that they evolved specifically to force our consciousness to focus along certain limited lines.
Filter thing.
Exactly. They filter out the sheer overwhelming totality of reality. They force us to perceive things in a narrow, manageable way that works for navigating physical space and time.
So, the senses aren't just revealing reality, they're kind of enforcing a specific, simplified version of it.
That seems to be the idea. They restrict our practical and imaginative range of consciousness. Think about it. Our senses make time feel linear, objects feel separate and solid. They impose that structure. Without that heavy reliance, maybe we'd naturally perceive, multiple timelines, or the constant energy exchange between things. The senses inhibit that broader scope.
Seth uses an analogy to explain this, right? The meadow.
Yeah, it's a great one. Imagine you're sent to explore this incredible, strange, and fascinating meadow, but you're only given the sense of sight.
Okay, so I see the colors, the flowers, the shapes.
Right, but you miss everything else. The smell of the damp earth, the buzzing sound of bees, the wind on your skin, the warmth of the sun, the feel of the ground under your feet. You'd come back with an understanding, sure, but it would be profoundly limited. Skewed.
And Seth is saying our normal state is even more limited than that.
That's the implication. Our focus is so narrowed by the outer senses that we only conceive of ideas and possibilities that fit within their range. We build our whole reality based on incomplete data.
So the danger is this, cringing dependence he talks about, mistaking the filtered view for the whole picture.
Precisely. And that dependence, he argues, actually hinders our growth, our evolution as conscious beings. It stops us from realizing our full human potentialities.
We can't solve bigger problems using only these limited tools.
You can't perceive interdimensional reality with just three-dimensional eyes, basically. Which is why Seth says it's crucial now for humanity to start experimenting with and using the inner senses.
The inner senses. What do they perceive that our outer ones miss?
Well, based on the framework, they'd perceive things like that extra value or value fulfillment directly. Energy patterns, the underlying connection between things, maybe nonlinear time, the reality of the psychophysical, seeing the consciousness within the form.
Seeing that molecular kinship instantly, maybe?
Yeah, bypassing the illusion of separation that sight and touch enforce. Realizing our full potential, Seth suggests, requires this expansion. It's like shifting from seeing only visible light to perceiving the entire electromagnetic spectrum, and maybe more.
Okay, so expanding beyond the senses. That brings us back to identity. Section 4, the arbitrary cave of selfhood. If our perception is limited, then our sense of self must be limited too.
Exactly. Seth states that the boundaries, limitations, and even the horizons of the self are merely arbitrary.
Arbitrary, meaning we just kind of made them up.
In absolute terms, yeah. There are no inherent fixed limits. In reality, each self is potentially infinite, totally unbounded, deeply connected to everything else. The solid core of identity we feel, the me that stops at the skin. That's a convenience, a focus chosen for this experience.
But we cling to it, don't we?
Oh, definitely. We seem to be creatures of psychological habit. And this clinging earns us a comparison from Seth that's both funny and pretty pointed.
What's the comparison?
He says that man, staying rigidly within the core of his arbitrarily designated selfhood, can be compared to early physical man cowering within his cave.
Ouch. That's quite an image. Cowering in the cave of self.
It's brilliant, though, isn't it? Early humans survived by limiting their world to the cave mouth, terrified of the vast unknown outside. Seth is saying, we've conquered the physical wilderness, we left the physical cave, but we haven't yet dared to venture out from the psychic cave of the limited self.
We haven't explored the inner environment that has no space or time limits. We're still psychically huddled.
Still cowering, in a sense.
And the reason is fear. Right. That's the big hurdle. If I let go of these boundaries, if I expand, won't I just dissolve? Won't I disappear?
That's the core fear. And Seth tackles it head on. He's very clear. This expansion is not about denial or dissolving the self or annihilation. Absolutely not.
It's not erasure.
No. It is strictly an expansion or extension. You don't lose yourself. You gain the universe, essentially. Your awareness expands.
He uses the expanding universe itself as an analogy for this, doesn't he? How does that work?
Yeah, he points out the universe is constantly expanding, but it's not expanding into space, taking up more room like blowing up a balloon. It's expanding in terms of value fulfillment.
Value fulfillment again. So like an increase in the quality and richness of experience.
Exactly. More experience, more consciousness, more quality of being. That's how the universe grows. And that's how the self is meant to grow.
So an expanding consciousness doesn't get physically bigger. It gets experientially richer, more aware.
Precisely. And that, Seth says, is humanity's next frontier. Our new challenge. Moving beyond that ingrained, panicky, and protective huddling inside the self we've arbitrarily defined.
Breaking out of the psychic cave.
Because, he insists, there is no actual boundary, not chemical, not electrical, not psychic, between what you call self and what you call not self. There are only different levels, different gradations of focus.
Wow. Okay, if there are only gradations, what does that mean for, say, our skin? We usually think of it as the ultimate boundary.
Right. Me inside, world outside. But Seth flips that. He suggests the skin is just as much, maybe even more, a necessary connective as it is a boundary.
A connective.
Instead of just a wall separating us, it's the interface, the membrane through which we constantly exchange energy, experience, value fulfillment with the environment. It's permeable, interactive. It connects us to everything else as much as it defines our physical form.
So, every second, we're kind of dissolving and reforming, connecting and separating in this constant dance.
That's a beautiful way to put it. A constant dance of connection and focus. We just don't usually notice it because our outer senses are so good at reporting only the separation and solidity.
Which brings us back to needing those inner senses to perceive the dance.
Exactly. To recognize that continuous connection that's always happening.
Okay, mind officially blown. But it gets even wilder, right? Section 5. Radical space travel.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up. We've established the self is potentially infinite, its boundaries arbitrary. Now, Seth applies this to, well, getting around the universe.
On the spaceships.
Not primarily, no. He suggests that practical, widespread space travel in the future will happen when humanity learns to use the expansion of the self. And crucially, through no physical act.
No physical act. So,
Yeah.
teleportation, pure consciousness travel.
Pretty much. How does the body, that psychic gestalt we talked about, get from A to B?
Yeah.
The mechanism relies on that core idea. Consciousness forms the body. So the individualized consciousness, the inner ego with its vitality, it can choose to relinquish the physical body, expand the self, using atoms and molecules as stepping stones to a given destination, and reforming the physical body at the other end.
Whoa. Okay, break that down. Relinquish the body.
The inner ego lets go of its tight focus, holding the physical pattern together.
Expand the self.
Consciousness expands out, using its inherent connection to everything.
Using atoms and molecules as stepping stones.
Traveling along that underlying kinship, that molecular fabric of the universe.
To a destination. And then reforming the body there.
Exactly. Reestablishing the exact same conscious pattern, the same psychic gestalt at the destination point. Like dematerializing here and rematerializing there, using the universe's own network.
Wow. So consciousness just travels instantly.
Or near instantly. Because consciousness itself isn't bound by physical speed limits in the same way.
Okay, but what about the atoms and molecules it passes through? Does it mess them up? Leave awake?
Seth has this really beautiful, almost poetic image for that. He says the consciousness traveling through these fields of atoms and molecules affects them only like a wind that passes through the treetops.
A wind through the trees.
Right.
So it doesn't damage them.
No, it's more like a momentary interaction, a rustling. He even suggests it provides kind of momentary new satisfaction for those basic components, a little ripple of novel experience for them. Remember, everything has some level of consciousness.
The universe sounds incredibly resilient and cooperative, actually.
But there's a catch. A very important and frankly kind of hilarious reality check.
Uh-oh. What's the catch?
The gallbladder problem.
The gallbladder problem. What on earth?
Seth specifically warns, if you happen to have a bad gallbladder when you decide to relinquish your body and travel this way, the body you reform at the other end will also have a bad gallbladder.
You're kidding. You travel across the cosmos using pure consciousness, and you still have your gallbladder issue. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And awful.
It's perfect, isn't it? It hammers home the point about consciousness creating reality. The illness isn't just a flaw in the physical parts that you can leave behind like old luggage.
It's in the blueprint.
Exactly. The problem is in the energetic pattern, the consciousness structure, that the inner ego carries with it. So when it reforms the body, it faithfully recreates the physical issue because the underlying conscious issue hasn't been resolved.
You cannot outrun your own consciousness.
Wow. You have to deal with the stuff that caused the problem in the first place. Expansion of self means dealing with your whole self, gallbladder issues and all.
So ultimately, what's stopping us from doing this now? Besides, needing to figure out the technique.
According to Seth, the biggest inhibitor is simply fear. That same panicky huddling in the psychic cave we talked about. The fear of letting go, of expanding, of trusting something beyond the physical.
And he thinks we'll probably invent complicated machines first.
He suggests it's likely mankind will develop some complex technological way to travel, space rockets, warp drives, whatever, long before realizing they could have just done it non-physically all along, because we trust external tech more than our internal potential.
That fear of the inner unknown is a bigger barrier than outer space.
Seems to be the message.
Okay. So after laying out all this incredibly abstract, theoretical stuff, Seth decides to give them a practical demonstration. Section 6. The physical evidence.
Yeah, this is where it gets really tangible. He literally says he wants to provide an extra perspective through direct sensation.
Right.
For Jane and Joseph right there in the room.
And what happens?
It's wild. During the session, Joseph, the host, starts noticing his right hand feels strange, like it's enlarged or fat.
His hand feels fat.
Yeah, and then Jane, who's channeling, experiences the exact same thing, especially her third finger. They both describe the skin feeling taut, looking flushed, the fingers feeling strained, a bit swollen.
While they're discussing the expansion of self. That's incredible timing.
Right. And Seth explains it immediately. He says this extension or expansion of self momentarily and initially involves a slight expansion of tissue.
So the physical body was actually reacting to the idea of expansion.
It seems so. Seth described it as the very first slow-motion step of that process, a deep pulsing, a beating forth of cells and molecules. If that process continued and accelerated, that would be the consciousness propelling itself out of the tissues, the mechanism for that non-physical travel, just in miniature.
Wow. Okay, so did they measure it? Joseph was so meticulous.
He absolutely did. He knew this was important. Even though the feeling started to fade near the end of the session, he got out paper strips and measured their right third fingers right afterwards, and then again the next night for comparison.
What did the measurements show?
Pretty startling results. Jane's right third finger measured 2 and 18 inches right after the session. The next night, it was 2 and 14 inches.
Wait, it got bigger the next night. No, smaller. 218 is smaller than 214.
Right, exactly. Sorry, yes. It measured 218 after the session when it felt swollen, and 214 the next night when it felt normal again. Meaning, it had indeed been enlarged by a full 1/18 of an inch during the session.
An eighth of an inch difference. That's measurable. That's actual physical change.
Definitely. And Joseph's own measurements, taken above and below the middle knuckle on his third finger, also showed a clear difference in circumference compared to the next night.
So there it is. Tangible, measurable, physical evidence linked directly to discussing the expansion of consciousness.
It's a powerful validation of the idea that consciousness is the architect, dynamically influencing the physical structure, proof that the body is a responsive psychic gestalt.
Joseph even noted his writing hand didn't feel tired, despite the long session, like the energy was different.
Yeah, suggesting maybe increased efficiency or altered energy flow within that gestalt framework.
Were there other sensations too?
Jane mentioned sometimes feeling like her left foot or hand was plunged into hot water, like it could almost dissolve or merge. And Joseph described feeling a thrilling sensation and physically light during some psychic experiments they did after the session.
All variations on that theme of boundaries becoming more permeable.
Seems like it. And those post-session experiments they did are interesting too. Joseph had this quick psychic glimpse.
Yeah.
Seeing a teenager trying to crack walnuts on a painted floor by stamping on them, which sounds random, but he then remembered he'd just noticed walnuts at the grocery store earlier that day.
So, like, his perceptive field had widened, connecting random bits of input.
Possibly, yeah. A kind of spontaneous psychic connection. And then there was that driving or gliding vision he had.
Right, the tractor-trailer truck coming down the hill on the wrong side. That sounded pretty scary.
It did sound unpleasant, yeah, coming right at him through this veil of white. But the crucial part was his realization within the vision itself.
What was that?
He realized he actually had plenty of room to pull over to the left and avoid it easily. He was safe.
Ah, okay, so even within this strange, expanded perception, there was still practical assessment happening. It wasn't just uncontrolled hallucination.
Exactly. Perception plus accurate, instantaneous problem solving. And Jive also had a late night vision, didn't she?
Yeah, around 3:30 a.m. Seen two hands, looking shiny like a sick person's, bathed in white light.
So the effects, the psychic opening or expansion, seemed to linger for both of them well after the formal session ended. They were navigating a reality that felt a bit more porous, maybe?
Definitely porous. What an absolutely mind-bending session. From a kink in the neck and traffic noise to molecular teleportation confirmed by a fat finger.
Yeah, it covers quite the range, doesn't it?
So let's try and wrap this up. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think there are two major, really interconnected themes that stand out. First, this idea that the self, as we know it, isn't some fixed, solid thing. It's more like an arbitrary boundary, a convenient focus, often maintained by fear and our reliance on those limited outer senses.
The psychic cave.
The psychic cave, exactly. And second, flowing from that, is the idea that consciousness is primary. It forms the body. It is the body's reality. And theoretically, it could use the universe's own molecular structure for travel, for expansion.
But you got to deal with your own stuff first, like that bad gallbladder.
Can't escape the gallbladder. You have to address the conscious patterns that create your reality, ailments included, before you can truly expand beyond them.
Classic Seth. Deal with your inner world before you try to conquer the outer cosmos. Okay, so we've really just scratched the surface here, exploring the foundation of these ideas. This has been our deep dive into Session 55 of the Early Sessions, Book 2 of the Seth material.
Recorded May 20th, 1964.
And again, we really do encourage you, if this sparked your curiosity, to dive deeper into Jane Roberts' work and the Seth material.
Absolutely. You can find the books and lots more resources from the publisher New Awareness Network. Their website and bookstore are at sethcenter.com/the early sessions. Really valuable stuff there.
Definitely. So final thought to leave you with. If Seth is right, if our skin isn't just a boundary, but maybe more of a necessary connective, constantly linking us to everything around us, then what's maybe one arbitrary boundary, one self-imposed limit maybe on your creativity, your potential, your connection that you've set for yourself today that perhaps you could start gently to dissolve tomorrow? Just a little expansion out of the cave.
Something to ponder. Until next time, keep questioning those boundaries and maybe listen a little closer to the wisdom of your own selves.